Do you ever just hate killing a boss on RuneScape? I know I do, so I will share with you the ones that I think are the worst of the worst. I think PvM in Old School Runescape is awesome, but there are just some bosses that are not worth your time at all, and some that don't even deserve being called a boss, really. For example, let's start with an honorable mention, the rabbit. So according to the wiki, one of the boss monsters in Old School Runescape is just called rabbit. It's likely that you haven't even heard of it, and to be honest, there is really no reason for you to have, as it is absolutely pointless. So it's a boss located north of the Prifdin city, and it has a combat level of 2. Yep, that's right, 2. Although this may make you think that the boss is extremely easy, it really isn't. It has 2000 health, which is as much as the corporeal beast. Besides, he hits super rapidly and has very high damage. Its strength goes as far as that something like an ice barrage only freezes it for a few seconds, and that really one of the best methods to kill it is by kiting it around like you would do at the Saradomin boss, Commander Ziliana.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
So the rabbit was added as a reference to the Monty Python and the Holy Grail movie, where in one of the fights the rabbit of Kerbanog easily defeats a bunch of knights, which is why it makes sense that it also only has one drop and you always get it. It's called the Crystal Grail, which costs around 300,000 and is purely cosmetic. I think the whole existence of this boss is pretty funny, and since it's clearly a meme boss, I don't think it deserved a spot on the actual list. But if it did, it would 100% be the worst boss in the game. But if we talk about the real entries, the number 5 worst boss in the game is the King Black Dragon. Let's start off by saying that this boss is extremely old, and it has been due for a rework for a very long time. In fact, the KBD was the first boss ever in RuneScape, added way back in 2002. That means it has been around since RuneScape Classic. So you have to understand that it's literally the RuneScape's creators' first attempt at making a boss at all, which explains how it's just so lackluster nowadays. Of course, back then, it was the strongest monster in the game, and it definitely deserved the King title, and undoubtedly it was a boss. But nowadays, it's not even the strongest of the Black Dragons. What I mean by this is that the King Black Dragon is just combat level 276. On the other hand, Brutal Black Dragons, which are not a boss, nor even a demi-boss, are combat level 318. After I realized this, the KBD doesn't feel like much of a king, to be honest. Want me to make it even worse? Brutal Black Dragons are also easier and faster to kill, make more money per kill, and they have a way higher profit per hour. Another big thing, you don't have to go through a wilderness PKing hotspot to get to the Brutal Black Dragons, do you now? In KBD's defense, it doesn't require level 77 Slayers to kill, unlike the Brutal equivalents. So there are not very many reasons to kill the King Black Dragon, other than for the pet or the KBD heads. For Iron Man, the Dragon Pickaxe or Dragonic Visage may also be arguments, but it's actually not even the best place to get them. Which means that your PvM time is just better spent somewhere else, including most other dragons. I mean, even the weakest full-size dragon, the Green Dragon, is usually about the same GP per hour as King Black Dragon. So in short, KBD is a bad boss because it has 2002 era mechanics. It's weak and boring. It's weaker than many non-boss monsters. Its GP per hour is terrible for a boss, and again subpar to many non-boss monsters. You need to go through the wilderness to get to it. And I still have beef with the fact that although it's the King Black Dragon, it's not even the strongest Black Dragon. But being the strongest is not always a good thing. You wanna know who is the strongest amongst its peers? The spot number 4. The Daganath Prime. This combat level 303 boss monster is one of the 3 Daganath kings, and Prime is the only one of the 3 that sucks. It doesn't really have any mechanics other than that you just pray mage against it. But if you don't, the Prime can hit you up to 50, which is a little funny if you ask me, since the other kings Rex and Supreme have a max hit of 26 and 30 respectively. So okay, let's say you still get the prayer right, then it's comparable to the other 2 kings, right? No, not really, unless you have a twisted bow. It's also the worst one to kill. So much so that if you're a mid-level account, it sometimes takes you so long that the Supreme already respawns before you manage to kill it. And you may be thinking, okay, it's stronger than the others, but the drops surely make up for it, don't they? Well, let me put it this way. The average Prime kill is worth about 18,000 GP. The average Rex kill is 30k and Supreme kill is 49k. So if you don't have the Fremennik Elite Diaries done, which makes the bones know that, you may even want to consider the drops without the bones, as you can only pick up a limited amount of them anyways. Which would make each kill earn you about 10k on average. Let me put this into perspective. Let's say you're really quick and kill it in only 30 seconds. The prime takes about 90 seconds to respawn, so this would mean that you could potentially kill up to 30 primes per hour, which would make up to about 300k GP per hour. That's about the same GP per hour as smithing cannonballs. So anyway, if you're not familiar with the Daganath Kings, you may just ask, hey nudfik, why do you kill the Daganath Prime then? Well, since that mother trucker also has a ridiculous attack range. You can't really kill the Supreme without the Prime aggroing you, and if they both attack you, you can only pray against one and take massive damage from the other, unless you can flick between prayers of course. Due to this, if you're going to kill Daganath Kings, it's usually all three at the same time. This is manageable thanks to their long respawn times, as you can usually kill one while the others still haven't respawned. So again, if you're doing Daganath Kings, you just kind of need to kill the Prime anyways. It's just a shame that it happens to be in a spot where it's the worst one to kill, yet it's also the one with the worst loot. Its only notable drop is the Seer's Ring, which is just 370k, while the Rex drops the Berserker Ring which costs 2.3 million, and Supreme drops the Archer's Ring at a whopping 4.3 million GP. So in conclusion, the Daganath Prime sucks because it does more damage than the other Daganath Kings, and it's usually harder to kill than the other Daganath Kings. Its uniques are way worse than the other Daganath Kings, it's worse GP per hour than other Daganath Kings, it's worse GP per hour than pretty much everything in Old School Runescape. Free-to-play players can go collect red spider's eggs and still make more than only killing Prime would make. And you are forced to kill it. It's a chore. But you know what you're fortunately not forced to kill? The list entry number 3, the Abyssal Desire. The Sire is a boss version of the Abyssal Demon, which can only be killed on a Slayer task. So if it's the boss version, it means that it's worth killing over the regular ones, right? I wouldn't say so. Especially if you're trying to actually get some decent Slayer experience, as the experience there is awful anyways. The profit there would be around 1 million GP per hour, but this is only on paper, as it includes the unique drops. The uniques at the Sire are, well, kind of garbage. Let me explain the loot system there. So you have a 1 in 100 chance of receiving an item called Unsired from the boss. This can be taken to the font of consumption, where it can be traded for a reward. The rewards include bludgeon pieces, the Abyssal Dagger, the Abyssal Whip, the Jar of Miasma, the Abyssal Head, and the Pet. But why it sucks? Well, every Unsired has a 1 in 2.06 chance of giving you a bludgeon piece. And the problem with the bludgeon pieces is that they're useless before you receive all 3 of them. So if we calculate the chance of getting them to boss kills, you'd get 1 bludgeon piece every 206 kills. This means that on average, the full bludgeon would take 618 kills to complete. And that's just to get a 10 million GP weapon. Anyway, this whole ordeal makes the average Unsired worth only 2.4 million, and it averages out to that only once you complete the bludgeon. The boss fight is also somehow one of the least enjoyable fights in the game. I think it's mainly due to 2 reasons. Firstly, there's a lot of time where you can't really attack the boss. It's invulnerable while you take out the respiratory systems, while it's walking, teleporting, and so on. So the fight really doesn't feel like it flows well at all. Secondly, it's a lot of effort for a pretty weak boss, as it has more mechanics than other equivalent bosses. I mean, let's take Kraken for example. It requires a similar Slayer level and gets you similar GP per hour. But killing Kraken, you can just take a quick nap after starting each kill, as it's pretty much an AFK boss. So comparing it to the Sire, it just doesn't feel like a boss that would be worth spending a Slayer task at. So I myself would definitely stick to just killing Abyssal Demons for a Slayer task, and just hoping for a better Slayer task if I wanted to kill Slayer bosses. So shortly, this is why not to kill Sire. It has poor XP for a Slayer task. It has poor GP per hour compared to other similar effort bosses. It has annoying mechanics and a lot of idle time. The uniques there are just meh, and it has high requirements. The next boss is also bad on a Slayer task, but it's even worse off task. So the entry number 2, the Zamarack boss, Krill Tsutsaroth. This boss is somewhat similar to the Bandos boss, General Grador, which is not a good thing by any means, as I've always hated the both of these bosses. So now when I thought about why, it took some time to really analyze what's behind it, and there are multiple things. Talking about the Zammy boss specifically, it's a horrible boss to solo, and doing it in a duo or trio is really the way to go. This makes it an especially miserable boss for Iron Man, because it drops the Zamarackian spear, which when turned into the Hasta is super useful and sought after. So somehow this boss is designed in a way that killing it in a team is super boring, as it has a 90-second respawn timer, so most of your time is just spent waiting around for it to respawn. Yet if you do it solo, you're so overpowered by the boss plus the 3 minions that you're just going to get 2 to 7 kills per trip if you're really good at it. But why is this especially bad? You can't just bank and come back. You have to spend about 5 to 10 minutes killing imps outside of the door, as you need 40 kill count of any Zamarackian followers to even enter the room. I mean, I would be more accepting towards this boss' imbalanced strength if it was a more interesting fight, but it's really boring again. The only mechanic you're going to do when soloing is that you should step under it after attacking it twice, and if you have any healing spells or weapon, use them on the minions between kills. Other than that, just eat and hope that it doesn't hit you hard, since it's literally only strong because it just does so much unavoidable damage. The boss can hit you for up to 49 damage through your prayer, and as if this wasn't bad enough, this attack also drains half of your current prayer points. So if you're not hunting uniques or the pet, there is really no reason to kill it over the other God Wars bosses, as it's also worse GP per hour than they are, because the uniques are just less expensive here. As a side note, I do admit that the pet looks super cool and I do wish I had it. So summarized, the boss sucks because it's boring in teams, it's boring in solo, it does a ton of unavoidable damage, making solo just an eating fest. You need to kill minions for 5 to 10 minutes before being allowed to do your 2 kills in there. And it's stronger than the other God Wars bosses. It is less GP per hour than our God Wars bosses. And I don't have its pet and it looks cool. So if you think Grill Tutsaroth is the only bad boss with a cool pet, you should take a look at the number 1 on the list, the Caliphite Queen. This boss is similar to the King Black Dragon, in the sense that it's old as hell, as it was released way back in 2004. But somehow, when KBD got a lot easier with the power creep, players still struggle with the Caliphite Queen to this day. I mean, it can't be considered to be a difficult boss, but you really don't get more than 1 to 3 kills per trip here. This is due to the fact that the Queen attacks with both ranged and magic, so you can't avoid both of them with your prayer. The worst part, all hits that are not blocked by your prayer are 100% accurate. No zeros. The Caliphite Queen will shred through your health like it's no big deal to this day. So there's also a problem with getting such few kills per trip. Banking takes an annoyingly long run. This gets a little better after finishing the Desert Elite Diary and 86 agility, since then you can use the shortcut in the Caliphite layer to save a lot of time on the run. The ugly part, you need a KQ head to complete this diary, which is a 1 in 128 drop chance from guess who? The Caliphite Queen. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that the only reason why like 90% of people ever even kill Caliphite Queen is to get the Desert Elite Diary, yet one of its rewards is a huge upgrade to make killing the Queen easier. After getting the head, there is really zero reason to kill the boss except for the pet, which is kinda paradoxical. So anyway, let's talk about the GP per hour. Without the shortcut, you can likely expect about 15 to 20 kills per hour. 15 kills would translate to about 320k in profit on average, when accounted for the cost of using a blowpipe and other supplies. This is such a ridiculously low amount for this boss. Even the uniques are not worth hunting, as the Dragon 2-hand sword and Dragon chain body are pretty much useless, and for Iron Man they're also possible to get elsewhere. It's just shocking how off balance the struggle to kill the boss is compared to the rewards, making it easily the top 1 worst boss in Old School Runescape. So a short conclusion to why you shouldn't kill it. It deals a ton of unavoidable damage. You get short trips and low kills per hour. It takes an annoying run to the boss. It has terrible GP per hour, and it has a boring fight and is just an eat fest. So Jagex, please give a second look to the KQ drop table, please. It needs something a little more spicy than this. You wanna know what else is spicy? The top 5 list video on the screen. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy that one too. Give it a try. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.